have to switch to my phone at some point too. I've already crashed once. So we'll, just giving that heads up, if you don't see me on this, it means I'm trying to get back in.
So we'll start in about a minute. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before the roll call, Don Span has been excused. Patty, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, I can. Ronald Bisson. I see Ron. I know he's here. Larry Brand.
Present.
Thank you. Scott Libby.
Here.
Spooner.
Here.
Tom Thompson.
Present.
Bruce Benoit. So just Bruce Benoit and Donald Span are absent.
Present.
I apologize, Bruce. There you are. Just so everyone's there except Donald Span. Thank you.
Okay. Next item is approval of the minutes, September 15th, 2020. Is there any discussion? Or is there a motion?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes as presented.
You have a motion? We have a second?
A second.
Ron and Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
I have to abstain. I did not get a copy of those.
One abstention. Thank you. Now, before moving on, I'd like to make a suggestion. Since we are using the Zoom platform to emulate our former in-person meetings, and as a matter of respect to everyone involved, I'm asking that the members of the board, planning staff, and applicants keep their videos, Zoom videos activated during the course of the meeting, please. Thank you. Andrew, if you could please go over the procedure of how we will handle comments from the public this evening.
Yes, good evening. If you are interested in speaking to the board, please wait until the chairman opens the public comment session for the item that you wish to speak to. When the public session is opened, please raise your hand via the chat function. The meeting facilitator will recognize your raised hand and allow you to talk. Please provide your name and address for the record. After you are done speaking, you'll be shifted back to a meeting attendee role. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes and constrained to topics not already discussed in order to allow the board to hear from all interested citizens.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda tonight is Roma Joe's Coffee Franchising LLC, 1 2nd Street, tax map U05-022 and U05-050. For site plan and conditional use approvals for a mixed use building. This is continued from our 9/15/2020 meeting. After closing the public hearing and after board discussion at our last meeting, the application was tabled requesting staff to address the issues which were raised and to provide the usual findings of facts and conditions for our consideration. Staff responded with a memo dated October 2nd, 2020, which is part of our packet this evening. But before moving forward, I would like to ask the staff and the applicant if they have any new or additional material they'd like to discuss at this time. Andrew, do you have anything new?
Just one quick correction. In the memo that we provided in the proposed conditions for the project, there's an incorrect date reference. In the reference to the plan set that this project would be conditioned to be built against, the date is indicated as March the 44th of 2020. Thank goodness we don't have 44 days in a month. It's actually supposed to be the 4th of March. So should you choose to engage those conditions, just recognize that that's a typo. It should be March the 4th, 2020. The applicant has provided a response to the few outstanding site plan related issues that was posted to the website, indicating their interest in adjusting the architecture of the site in particular.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Clark of Sightlines. You have anything to add or anything new?
No, not really. I'd just like to thank the staff for preparing the findings and the conditions. We were pleased with the tone of that. I think there may be some modifications or clarifications for a couple of items, unless staff or unless the board has any other questions about items from us. And I'm not sure how you are going to proceed with this at this point. But I've got a couple of comments on some of the conditions, and I don't know if you want me to go through that now, or should we wait until we go through that, or if does staff have any questions or board have any questions of us?
I would say let us go through it, and if you can, I'm sure the board will have many questions for you. First of all, I would like to ask, and this is really directed at the applicant and staff, has the ponding issue been resolved to everyone's satisfaction?
I didn't hear your question.
I can try to address. So there was a technical comment about ponding. Andrew, you can help jog my memory here, but we walked the site with our peer review engineer there. I think with the resurfacing of Main Street that's anticipated for the next year, that the ponding issue out there would be able to be solved by the town's resurfacing of Main Street. Is that sum that meeting up, Andrew?
Yeah, between Dennis and Tom Sauce here, they both felt confident that with slight tweaks to the grading of the final pavement, that water that sits at that intersection can get pushed back towards the catch basin that's closer to the Route 201 and 196 intersection. So we don't think that there's a catch basin that's required to be installed, and that the applicant would need to do any sort of additional drainage structure at that location.
Okay, thank you. And the only other question I have, and I would direct this to Kevin, could you just briefly go over the 3 waivers that staff has agreed to? But,
Absolutely. You're going to catch me off guard on the waivers, but let me just pull up another
well,
document
that's all
here.
right. We can come back to that.
Give me just a moment.
Would you like for me to come back to that, Kevin?
Yes, please. Let me find my notes on the waivers.
I will come
Sorry
back to
about that.
Okay. I'll now move to the board for questions, comments, and sense of how to proceed. And I'd like to start with Scott. Scott, do you have any questions or comments?
Oh, thank you. I really don't have any questions. I thought one thing that we had left unresolved was the MDOT traffic report. We didn't really get into that at the last meeting. And I guess it was in the packet. I did not look at it last time. I had seen the one that the applicant had provided by Diane Morabito, and I'd seen the review by the town traffic engineer peer reviewer, Tom Rico, but not the one from MDOT. It looks like MDOT is recommending one of the same things that Tom did, and that was a singularized putting up signals. So I have got a horrible head cold. It's been a long day. For the sliding lanes off of 196 to the right and onto 201, both east and west directions. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that, if possible, Kevin.
Yeah, if Andrew, could you elevate Diane, and I'll let Diane talk about those conditions or that permit process.
Hi, it's Diane Morabito. Yes, we have the draft. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So we have our draft traffic movement permit from DOT, and that's one of the items. The only item that's in contention is a draft condition that we signalize those right turn slip lanes. As we discussed last time, we felt that that was a lot to ask of this project. If you remember, we talked about the AM peak hour volumes at that intersection being 2,919 vehicles, and we are adding 15, which is 0.5% increase. And during the PM peak hour, we're only adding 6 vehicles to over 3,500 vehicles. So we are having such a minor increase in volumes. The applicant feels that it's just more fair if we pay an impact fee towards that project rather than requiring this applicant to do that amount of work. When you consider that they're already building a lot of sidewalks, et cetera, to improve pedestrian safety. So the draft permit calls for it, but DOT often will go with the preferences of the town. So that's something that still needs to be worked out, whether or not they actually, and then, as I said last time, also your own peer reviewer suggested that he would rather see a typical urban lane versus signalizing those ramps. So there's a difference of opinion as to what is the best solution. And I don't really think it should be up to this project to solve it or solve it quickly. We would rather just pay an impact fee towards that improvement versus having to make it. So that's the one thing that's undecided. And that also relates to the conditions as drafted, because they say pay an impact fee and or meet the conditions of the DOT permit. So at this point, it's pretty vague as to what the applicant needs to do. It's kind of undecided still.
And just to
Would love
clarify,
some clarity.
I don't have Tom's report in front of me right now, so I'm just off the top of my head, but it seemed to me that the option to make the intersection an urbanized, more urbanized intersection was actually a probably more costly endeavor, because you'd have to remove the slip lanes and make the intersection a smaller intersection. So it seemed like that was his preferred recommendation, and it was a step beyond the signalization of the slip lanes.
Right, that may indeed be correct, but I'm just saying, do we want to just jump and necessarily implement the cheapest option when it may not be the best option? And obviously, again, we're contesting that it's a lot to ask of this one small project with very small vehicular impact on that intersection.
And I just countered to say that the recommendation both by Tom and MDOT are for mitigations that by definition note that there's an impact, which under conditional use, the third item is any anticipated traffic for the proposed development will not cause an adverse negative impact. And I think that both the MDOT recommendation and for the permit and the town peer traffic engineer are both clearly saying that there is an impact by putting these mitigations forward.
MainDOT often will put in the draft permit what the town wants to see. So I believe that was driven a lot by town staff's opinions. And in all honesty, I'm not sure that a 0.1 or 0.5% increase is a significant increase or would be considered worthy of having to mitigate immediately, which is why we felt an impact fee was more important. And Tom's raising his hand. So you should let him speak.
Well, good evening. If Mr. Chair, if it's okay for me to speak on this discussion.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening, Tom Errico, Town Traffic Peer Reviewer. I just want a couple things. One, the intersection is a high crash location, so there have been a number of crashes. But I think more importantly, the town, you know, when we look at the impact of the project, it's not all about the automobile traffic. It's not about trips coming to and from the site. There's an impact related to that. But quite frankly, there's concerns about pedestrian activity and the proximity of the project to school campuses on the other side of 196, and the fact that we expect, and it's a good thing, right? We want a walkable, livable community, and I think it's good that it's that, but certainly that intersection is a difficult intersection, to say the least, to walk across. And so my recommendations really talked about a couple of things. Diane talked about it. One was really rethinking it from a geometric perspective and trying to really sort of shrink it, maybe downsize it a little bit to sort of rethink how, the size of it. That's a big effort. And so, yep, that's Tom thinking big picture, what would be the best scenario when the town asked me to look at sort of, I'll say, long range planning. Signalizing those channelized right turn, right? Those are free flowing movements that quite frankly contribute to, there is a clear crash pattern on one of them. And they're really difficult for pedestrians to get across. And so MDOT's draft condition to do that, I think it improves conditions. I think it will make it safer. And given that this project's going to add to that intersection, it's right on the corner. It's in the direct line of sort of OD patterns for pedestrians. Makes sense to me. I think Diane made a comment about the town, maybe myself advocating for that. If anything, the town was advocating for grander plans. That's, and so quite frankly, DOT pulled back from that. And in their draft condition recommended the signalization of those two movements.
Thank you. Scott, do you have anything else?
Yeah, sure. Since Tom brought it up as far as the pedestrian safety in that intersection, and really the goal for the village center is to have a more pedestrian friendly walkability. It's expressed in the comp plan in a number of places. We brought it up at the last meeting, or decided, and we discussed it. I mean, this project and the applicant or the applicant's representative made it clear that, yes, they have, these outdoor tables, they have, a coffee shop in there. They've met some of the goals of having a mixed use facility, which are laudable, and what we are envisioning for the village center, but also noted that it wouldn't be financially plausible for this project to happen or move forward without the drive-through, which means that this is a vehicle-centric business. It's not pedestrian-centric, it's vehicles. And I think that along with the issue with traffic impact, the vehicle-centric notion, and the fact that it is not consistent with the Main Street plan that specifically says sit-down restaurants, no drive-throughs, that it doesn't meet the second condition for a conditional use. I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah. I just, in the interest of savings of time, is the applicant prepared to perform all the conditions in the DOT draft permit, including the signalization of 196 and the building of a sidewalk along 2nd Street to Monument in the crosswalk? Because we're saying, you know, if you're trying to negotiate through the planning board with DOT, I'm not into that. Just not into it. So if a condition of any approval is that you meet the permit conditions of the draft Maine DOT permit, are you prepared to proceed on that basis?
Kevin, would you like to respond?
That was what we were anticipating was a condition, and it seemed like condition 12 seemed unclear, as it said, traffic impact fee and or acquisition of the traffic movement permit. And also 13 talked about.
Now that's because if you want to have those negotiations, then have them, figure out what you're doing. Let's table it and come back and tell us what everybody came up with a plan. As you know, this is nothing new for me. It has nothing to do with the fact that DOT is this thing. I like things to be cooked before we get here. And if we're still trying to negotiate certain things right now, there's two choices. Either we kind of just move forward and say, yeah, we're going to do it as part of the permit application. And yeah, I would agree that if you do everything that's in that permit application, which includes the signalization as described above, and quote, a sidewalk to Monument Place. If you're prepared to do that, I'm good, because I'm not gonna, negotiate terms sitting here now. My anticipation based on this was that you were prepared to go forward on that basis. If you are, we can. Otherwise, I think we might still have some, technical problem solving to do. So that's my first initial question. And then on the second one, if we're, on re-airing what's compatible with the comprehensive plan and condition 2, I'd be glad to weigh in with a slightly different opinion than Scott does, respectfully. But if we're not willing to get past this first one, I don't need, let's get there.
Okay. Lauren, did you want to say something? I saw you just popped up on the screen.
Yeah, so can everybody hear me?
Just a moment.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Does Mr. Goodrich wish to address us?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm trying to speak. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, board. With all due respect, I appreciate your time tonight. I know we've all put a lot of time into this project. The plan has changed on numerous occasions. We've added, I'm prepared to do the sidewalk down 2nd Street. I'm prepared to do the 200 some odd feet of sidewalk down 196 and 201 in the crosswalk going across 2nd Street into, I guess, a hill, for lack of a better way to put it. But, after agreeing to so many things and keep moving along, the signalization and the $70,000 to $100,000 that would cost put me over the top. So I'm willing to pay the impact fee the town has assessed or disclosed to go towards the intersection, but I'm not willing to do the whole intersection. So if that kicks this project out, then so be it. We'll have to figure out and wait till a time when some other project can come along and chip in and help pay for it if the town isn't willing to fix the intersection. I thought I was very clear with that last week, and I apologize if it wasn't clear.
No, it was the actual permit. What's different here, I'm sorry, Tom, through the chair.
That's okay. It's okay. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, what is different here is, first of all, I'd like someone to tell me that that's what that is. Diane giving you that estimate? Because that's not my understanding what that costs at all. I haven't heard what that estimate is, so that's not a, $70,000 to $100,000 I get is a significant amount. That's not what, at all, my understanding what that would cost, just so you understand. But if you want to pull it based on that, that's always your right. I hope you don't, honestly. As you know, I kind of invested some time in this effort along with everybody else on this call about trying to get us to a place where you could, it meets the codes and takes care of the traffic safety, and in my view meets the conditional use and site plan development. But doing something at that intersection is what I'm hearing is consistent with engineers at DOT, our peer review engineer, that something has to happen at that intersection. And is that $75,000 to $100,000 an estimate you've received from your engineers what it would take to do that? I mean, if it is, that's fine, but that's just not my understanding. And so I bring it up because that's kind of relevant to placing the conditions, what those costs are.
Yeah, and Diane, you could say that, but Diane had told me that it would be approximately $70,000, and of course, seeing a lot of cost overruns, I'm just assuming it's going to be higher than that. So,
no, I've been the consumer of services as well, and so I get that kind of instinct. So this is a question now for Diane. Have you consulted with DOT as to what the scope and usual cost is of that? Have you discussed each one of those permit conditions in detail and came out with an understanding of what the scope and cost would be?
I believe the cost I came up with is 50,000, but we are looking at new vehicular signal poles that will need to go in for 2 approaches with new foundations and new poles. Then you're going to need new pedestrian signals, 2 for each slip lane and 2 for 4 slip lanes, 4 pedestrian signals, 4 pedestrian poles, 4 pedestrian foundations. You've got a lot of movements out there already. I'm not sure the controller is going to be fully capable. It's possible you'd need a new controller because you've got a lot of movements out there already. I don't know how old that controller is. You're going to have a lot of mobilization costs for that sort of project. So yeah, we'd come up with approximately.
Have you talked to Steve Landry about that, Diane?
I have not talked to Steve, no. No.
Well, he's the signer of the permit, as you know, and that would normally, in my experience, when you're assessing development risk, you would discuss it with the people that are trying to impose such conditions. So I would suggest that, and quite frankly, this is to Lauren, I wouldn't pull this until you get those answers. Honestly, I wouldn't, and I hope you don't, but it's not my understanding that level of cost is required. And if it is, that's relevant, but we still have to find a way to get it done one way or the other to, have the project go forward for reasons that Scott says, and some of the findings we have to make about traffic safety. Traffic safety was the outstanding issue from my perspective at the last meeting, and to not have kind of nailed some of that stuff down, I'm guessing in hopes that we'll just waive it and take a check and have the town do it, none of which we have the authority to make sure happens as a planning board. I guess that's where I am. And just so I can finish talking, Tom, with due respect, Scott, about compatibility of that, given that the drive-through, I think it's important if we get to that point that the findings talk about the drive-through being not on the main street, but on side streets. And I agree it's necessary for the viability thing, Scott. I agree it is. But Main Street vision isn't part of code, isn't part of a zoning code. So I get the argument. I just respectfully disagree on that. So that's where I am about our ability to move forward, getting past condition 2, but sounds like the condition regarding traffic and traffic conditions may be a bigger deal right now. So
Thank you,
that's
Bruce.
where I am, Tom.
Thank you, sir. Josh, would you like to weigh in?
Sure. I think we're focused on the traffic question now, and I just wanted to get some clarification, maybe from Andrew, that when you drafted the condition and wrote and/or, that is, pay the traffic impact fee and/or acquire the traffic movement permit. Is it an and/or? Is it, or should it be and? In other words, could the applicant pay the traffic impact fee rather than getting the permit?
They are mandated by state law based on the number of trips that they've generated to receive and acquire a traffic movement permit.
Okay, so if that's the case, then, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Andrew, if you had more to add.
And I wrote that condition because we don't know if they are going to, or what their response to those requirements of offsite mitigation are. We had no indication one way or the other. So, if DOT were to change their perspective on any component of that offsite mitigation, they still need to be in compliance with our local ordinance and the traffic impact fee that requires. If if they follow DOT's offsite guidelines or offsite mitigation requirements, rather, there is no fee that is owed to the town. They're essentially, their traffic impact fee would be credited towards that improvement, and they wouldn't be paying both us and improving the site. They would just be improving the site.
Okay, and then just to follow up on what Mr. Errico, Tom, what you had to say in terms of your report on the issues that might be caused by the development. You seem to say that you were looking to make it more safe, and the condition is that it's not going to cause an adverse material impact on traffic. And the numbers that Diane cited seem to suggest it's a very immaterial impact on traffic. So I just want to be sure that what the town is suggesting through its pure traffic advisors, that we're not looking to improve the situation, we're looking to avoid an adverse impact.
That's true. And not, I think the other related thing has to do with the actual traffic movement permit regulations. Quite frankly, it isn't a very fair regulation in terms of equitably implementing improvements in some fashion. There's been some interest to do that as a department in terms of trying to implement an impact fee program of some type at a state level, so that there's some level of partnership by contributing from various different developments, but that's not the case with the current regulations. And so fact of the matter is, applicants are required to mitigate existing issues that exist. And so part of the fact is that we have an unsafe intersection classified as a high crash location. The other fact of the matter is we have a development that we know is going to generate pedestrian trips, and that we know we have a location that's stuck in the middle between one origin and the destination. And so not only do I and certainly staff believe some sort of mitigation is required there, but the department as well. They weighed in with their draft conditions and speak to it.
Well, then I guess I'm probably in the same of the same mindset that Bruce is. That needs to be cleared up really before we can move forward. Unfortunately, given where I was last meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. Larry, would you like to weigh in?
Actually, I think Bruce covered my concerns quite well. My concern right now is that intersection. You have almost no pedestrian traffic that is trying to get across from one side of Main Street or 196 to the other, because there's not really an attractive nuisance, so to speak, at that. There will be, though, with this. So yeah, I agree with Bruce that I think we really need that part of specific conditions 12 and 13 clarified before we can move forward. I also agree that I think it's a great project, that I think everything else is going to be fine, but I do want clarification in regard to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron?
Yeah, I agree with Larry and Josh. It's just, yeah, which way to go? Let them pay the impact fee or do that intersection.
Okay. Thank you. I too agree with Bruce and Josh regarding this matter. So I think it's a great project too. But I do think this needs to be resolved. So I guess I'm going to look for a motion here to table. Does anyone want to make that motion?
If I could, Tom, before I make that motion, again, I hope the applicant hears what the majority of the board is feeling about the quality of the project. And I think it's in their interest as well as, well, mostly theirs actually, to know exactly what those permit conditions mean, because I don't think the town has the ability to, I know the town does not have the ability to waive a permit condition in DOT's permit. I know that. So what those mean and what those cost, and whether that's acceptable is, I think, the issue that would help us all. And I can guarantee you, I and probably every member of this board was not looking to have another planning board meeting on this, as I'm sure the applicant is not either. But I like to, ideally, the gold standard, if you can get there, is that yes, we've discussed it with Steve Landry. By the way, that is Steve Landry. That is not me or anyone else at Maine DOT. It's Steve Landry's deciding that, and he will be applying this. And those draft conditions were created without my knowledge before, the last planning board meeting on that. And it would be wholly inappropriate for me to try to somehow change those conditions. They were established. I understand Tom's future bigger vision, but that was, going to cost a boatload to do that kind of stuff. And so this was the kind of the practical, what we can do. The other alternative before we, well, I guess the majority of the board wants to know those answers before we do it anyway. If the applicant was willing to go forward and just meet the permit conditions, I was willing to do that. But what I hear is they are not, and the board wants to know the answer to that information. So I will make that motion as soon as the chair asks again that that's what he wants at this point.
We do have interest from Mr. Goodridge and his attorney to speak. I'm not sure if that's something you want to entertain.
We have any objections from the board that they speak?
No objection.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Tim Bryant. I'm the attorney for the applicant. Thanks for taking I actually have a question because I wasn't quite clear about one thing that was said earlier. Mr. Spooner asked a question of the town traffic peer review engineer as to whether or not he had concluded that this project was going to cause an adverse negative impact regarding the traffic on that intersection. And I didn't, and I certainly possible, I didn't hear it one way or the other, a clear answer, but I guess I'm asking that question because as I think we would all agree, when we do have the discussion with the MDOT, that conclusion by the town peer review would be impactful on that individual. If Diane has already concluded it would not, I would like to know what, and I'm asking, what's the peer review person for the town concluded regarding that particular finding that would be relevant to the discussions with the main DOT and might inform that person one way or the other regarding whether or not to change their mind. And that's an issue I don't disagree with Mr. Van Note that we have to go look at, whether, assuming the applicant wants to do that. But having that information is relevant to that conversation. I think Mr. Note would agree with me. I see him nodding, that that's an important variable. And I don't think I heard a definitive answer on that question. And I guess I'd ask for that. Is that something, Mr. Errico, that you've made a conclusory opinion on as to whether or not this particular project would have an adverse negative impact? I get your conclusion that the intersection is already dangerous and you think it needs to be addressed. That's not my client's issue. The question is, does this particular project have an adverse negative impact on traffic in that intersection? That's the question I guess I'm asking. If the board's okay, was that looked at and what was your conclusion, Mr. Chairman? I guess I'd ask that that question be answered, if it can be.
Okay, Tom, you there?
So I'll give a maybe an indirect response. I'll tell you a little bit about the process, and because the project requires a traffic movement permit per regulations based upon a number of trips that are generated. The applicant's required to submit a traffic movement permit application. And then as part of that application or follow up to that application, there's a scoping meeting that's organized and managed by Maine DOT. At that scoping meeting, you discuss what should be evaluated as part of the study. And quite frankly, when we discussed the Route 201-196 intersection, it wasn't related to vehicular operations. There's congestion there. Diane did an analysis of it. It actually indicated there's some movements that don't operate well. But the direction by the department at the scoping meeting and in agreement with, and the town was in agreement, including me, was looking at pedestrian accommodations and providing safe accommodations through that intersection. So by virtue of that scoping meeting and the requirement of traffic movement permit, that was the obligation of the applicant to address as part of their study. And so the outcome of that are the conditions that are in the permit, with the draft permit that require mitigation as it relates to pedestrian safety through the intersection.
Mr. Chairman, not trying to be difficult. So I guess, as I would say in my world, is that not part of your report, Mr. Errico? I'm not trying to be difficult or accusatory. I'm just asking, so that conclusion hasn't been reached one way or the other. I guess I'm asking that question as a layperson. You said you'll answer it indirectly. So I guess I'm asking, I don't understand. So I'm seeking to understand. I'm not trying to, what you do for a living is not what I do. So I'm asking a question. I think it's a fair one. If you haven't reached it and your answer is what it is, then that's fine.
So,
Excuse me.
I'll just add a little bit more.
I'm asking the chairman, can I ask that question? So,
I don't want to.
Tim,
yeah.
can I break in? Please. Tom, can you just give him what your final answer is, addressing his question? And, I don't want to go back and forth on this.
Yeah, I think it's an awkward question to ask me, quite frankly. We have a location that's been identified as deficient. We have a project that needs to meet standards as it relates to the traffic movement permit. And quite frankly, they need to evaluate that and identify mitigation, which is why it's in the permit. I would also add that the Maine Department of Transportation, in conjunction with the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, studied the town of Topsham And the number one location that was identified through that study as it relates to pedestrian bicycle safety is Route 196 and 201. It's documented. Go back and look at it. So the documentation is very clear that that intersection is deficient and needs mitigation. And again, like I said earlier, because of that, it's elevated to review as part of the traffic movement permit process.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, gentlemen.
Tom, I'm sorry if I
Yeah,
may.
Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up only because I think I raised the issue initially, and I think what we're driving at here is that we as a planning board, as a quasi-judicial body, look at the ordinance to decide whether or not the application meets the conditional use requirements, and the condition is that it's not the development, the project doesn't have an adverse material impact on traffic. Traffic's not really defined, but I keep hearing mitigation. I don't hear adverse negative impact. So I think that's another thing that the applicant's driving at. They want to know whether or not that's our conclusion. What MDOT decides down the road is not really, it doesn't impact our analysis, I don't think, in terms of whether or not the conditional use permit can be granted. We could grant the conditional use permit, we can grant the application and have it conditioned on MDOT granting the traffic permit, it seems to me. I just want to make sure that's how I think I interpret it at this point. Having heard Tom Errico give his explanation and having looked at the code.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Goodrich is interested in speaking as well.
Okay, Mr. Goodrich.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I respectfully ask, given what Mr. Van Note said, and certainly he's more qualified and more knowledgeable than I am. I don't every day put in traffic signals. I would respectfully request that the board vote this project up or down based upon me getting the traffic movement permit. And if the quotes come in at 70 to 100 grand and it is unviable, then so be it. Then we've done all we can do. But if we think it's going to come in a lot less than that, then that's something I will look at closely.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want to respond to that?
Only that I was willing to do that, but I don't think the rest of the board was. So I'm still willing to do that, but just know that the definition in those permits, the things that I saw that were potential cost was signalization and sidewalk up 2nd Street. And I still don't know exactly what that is. I know what Kevin said that is at the last meeting, but I don't know whether Kevin and DOT have agreed on what a sidewalk to Monument Place means. It's not as simple as you think, it doesn't say pedestrian passage, or pedestrian area. It says a sidewalk. I'm okay with whatever that judgment is, but has that discussion happened too? So again, I was ready to approve. Is DOT, are you going to comply with the draft DOT permit? And what I'm hearing the applicant say is, yes, we're willing to, I'll price it later and I'll make a business decision then. That's what I'm hearing. So if that is the case, I am willing to approve it based on compliance with a DOT permit, because that's a risk. The risk is essentially on the applicant then. The DOT permit talks for mitigation of the traffic. It talks what we have to do, mitigation for traffic, pedestrian and vehicular traffic. And if he's willing to do that, so am I, but I'd leave it to the rest of that's just one vote. I would have preferred all this discussion to have happened and we all knew and we're all nodding our head and say, yeah, we know what this all is. We know it's going to cost and we're happy to go forward together, but that's not where we are right now. So, but the risk would be on the applicant and it appears he's willing to accept it. So I could go forward if the rest of the board is, but I'm very deferential to the will of the board.
Thank you, Bruce. Scott, would you like to opine?
To opine?
To
Or to
opine.
answer? I mean, I'm willing to vote if we move forward with this. I don't think it really matters from the sounds of things what my vote will be. You know, but if I can opine, I'll take a minute and just say, you know, I know, you know, the comp plan is not ensconced in our ordinance, and I have a little warmer spot for it maybe. But conditional use is really one of the few areas where it brings up the comp plan and associated plans into our deliberations, rather than just the specific ordinances that are enshrined in 225 and whatever the other numbers are. And I think, you know, the town spent tens of thousands of dollars, probably hundred thousands of dollars on the planning efforts over the past years, and staff and volunteer has spent certainly hundreds, if not thousands of hours working on it. And just like the ordinance that we have, the plans are passed at town meeting by the body politic of the town. And, you know, in this case, you know, we're asked to look at it, and obviously my vision of what it says or interpretation and how to apply it is different than others. But I do hope that maybe we, after this project has been voted on and dealt with, that maybe we can, you know, work with CPIC, with the Comp Plan Implementation Committee, to try and develop our ordinances such that we are including a little bit more of the planning effort within them. And especially, you know, something we've talked about for, I'm pretty sure as long as I've been on the board, is revisit conditional use and revisit it in light of the plans that we've put together, and whether these conditional uses should even be in there and what should be permitted and not permitted, so that we have a clearer, I mean, it's not black and white ever, but a clearer vision of how those plans are incorporated in our ordinance. So that's my opine, over and out.
Okay, thank you. Larry?
If I could, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Hold off, Larry. Kevin?
No. Oh, please let Larry go first. I realized you're going around the horn here. I thought you had finished, but that's okay.
Well, then just the question, so are we talking about rewording specific condition 12? As far as saying traffic impact fee in accordance with section 199 and the acquisition of a traffic movement permit, et cetera?
I think our major question was, and in our previous conversations with staff, were that if the traffic movement permit required some form of mitigation, that the town would not require an impact fee, because they would consider the money we put towards that mitigation as our impact fee. And that's why
correct.
when I saw that condition written that way, it said and or, then that left the door open for them to say you have to pay the impact fee and do the mitigation, which was.
I mean, Kevin, I'll clear that up. I'll clear that up. I mean, probably bad wording on that condition, but if in fact, where it may be going tonight, that you go back to MDOT and talk about the draft TMP and whatever is negotiated there, if in fact there is no offsite mitigation by MDOT, I can't imagine that happening. But if all of that goes away, there's still a local impact fee that then should be captured, which is something you guys have brought up as well before. So I think that's what that condition is attempting to get at.
Right, and if you want to revise that language to make that clear, I think we'd be happy to ask the board to take a vote, and we would accept the condition that you know, is condition on the MDOT permit.
Okay, yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is, the negative impact on traffic. And I look at pedestrian being part of the traffic. So that's been my concern all the way along. So I think I'm all set for right now, Tom.
Thank you. Ron, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm with Bruce. I think we ought to give him a yes or no on the building and stuff, and see what happens with what's going to happen with the rest, with the impact fees. I think
Okay.
we've gone long enough. I think we ought to give him at least a yes or no on the building and stuff, and go with that.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
Tom, may I make
Oh,
a
hi,
point?
Josh. Oh, I'm
Hi, Tom.
sorry, Josh, I skipped over you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. The only thing I wanted to add was, in terms of pedestrian traffic versus vehicular traffic, again, looking at the conditional use ordinance, the wording is the anticipated traffic for the proposed development will not cause an adverse negative impact on the neighborhood. So I think that's referring to the vehicular traffic as opposed to an increase in pedestrian traffic, which is what the coffee shop is likely to cause. So again, I don't see an adverse negative impact based on the additional vehicular traffic drawn to the area by the development. And I'm also ready to have a vote on it, subject to getting the MDOT permit.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bruce. Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions set forth on pages 1, I love everything digital. On pages 1 through 6, contained in a memo to Don Span from Rod Melanson dated October 2nd, 2020. I hereby move that the conditional use permit for a fast food restaurant and site plan permit for the mixed use building to be located at 1 2nd Street be approved with conditions in accordance with the conditions set forth on pages 6 through 7 of said memo dated October 2nd, with the following revision. Regarding paragraphs 12 and 13, the applicant will comply with the conditions of the traffic movement permit from the Maine Department of Transportation prior to the issuance of any necessary construction of permits, including off-site mitigation contained in those permits, comma, period. If there are no such off-site mitigations of that permit, comma, the applicant agrees to pay a traffic impact fee in accordance with section 199. I think that's my motion.
One addition or clarification on that motion, Bruce. You said
Sure.
paragraph 2, page 7. There's a little bit over onto page 8. for the conditions.
Yes, and thank you. I consider that a friendly amendment.
And I second the motion.
And now, before moving on, is there any discussion on the motion? I did have one question here, guys. We haven't talked about the waivers. Should we make that a separate motion before we move forward with this one? Or can we include it in this motion?
Sorry, Tom, where are all those?
On,
That on my screen, if you want me to read that.
They were-
Where are they in this memo?
they're not in the memo, I don't believe. They were Kevin's letter, response letter, I think was what page? Well, Kevin can tell me which page it is, but
I think it was on page, I think it was page 9 of the letter. But there's also a separate application form for the waivers. And so they're spelled out on that application form. That's in the package as well. The 3 waivers were 175-12 2.1, which was, and the justification for that was on-street parking, and it was the town of Topsham prohibits parking on the north side of 2nd Street.
Can I hold you up a second, Kevin?
Yeah.
On that, please. I don't mean to interfere, but my question, I guess, to the board is, based on what's transpired so far with this motion of Bruce, should we come back with another motion on the waivers? Just to not just to keep it somewhat clear.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, my apologies. I should have made that motion before, and I didn't toggle to the right screen that had the waiver list. And I, in actual practice, those should generally be done before we grant the final thing. But I wouldn't want anything like a counsel for an applicant to think by granting this, we are hereby grant, and get us in any kind of problem with ordering. But I'm sure Tim wouldn't do that, and I'm sure he'd let us go back, and otherwise we have a motion and a second. How do you go back and do that?
I move that we table Bruce's current motion for discussion in the space of 10 minutes.
To a date, what time certain that works. I would.
So do we need a second?
I would second that.
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
So where am I supposed to be on these waivers? I find this.
Place that they were listed was in Kevin's note.
On page.
Which page was it, Kevin?
Page
Andrew,
10
could
of
you
the
cite the
application.
waivers? Could you cite the sections? Whoever has them up, cite the sections. What was brought?
I'm trying to get there, I think.
What is it?
It's 225.27E.6.D, and then 175.12 2.1, then 225 attachment 2 footnote 15.
I just copied and pasted into the chat function as well.
Including what those things are. See, normally I would cancel my video to not show my exasperation right now, Mr. Chairman, but given your instruction earlier, I'll just let the world all see it. I need to know what those are. And
Okay, how about if I read them?
I could Should I make a motion?
Oh, if you can make a motion as to what those are, I think that's awesome.
Okay. I move that we grant the following waivers as summarized in accordance with section 175-13, waiver conditional agreement time limits of the Topsham Code. The specific waivers are section 225-27E 6D. In order to place the proposed building as close to Main Street as possible and to facilitate safe turning movements within the drive-through lane, as well as a significant landscape distance to the actual edge of the sidewalk and roadway at intersection of Route 196 and Main Street. Second waiver would be to section 175-12, 2.1 regarding on-street parking. The third waiver would be section 225, attachment 2, footnote 15.
Sorry, in terms of findings, the rationale, I think I know, but for the record, given, council's watching, the rationale for the other two waivers, the first one was described, the rationale, Kevin, for the other two waivers.
You want the applicant's response to those waivers? Is that what you're looking for, Bruce?
That's what I'm looking for, why
Okay.
they're necessary.
On 225-27E.6D, the rationale is in order to place the proposed building as close to Main Street as possible and to facilitate safe turning movements within the drive-through lane, as well as the significant landscape distance to the actual edge of the sidewalk and roadway at intersection of Route 196 and Main Street. Response to 175-12, 2.1 on-street parking. The town of Topsham prohibits parking on the north side, 2nd Street, and MDOT indicated that they would not allow parallel parking along Main Street. Planner also indicated in his initial review that 2nd Street did not lend itself to a favorable on-street scenario. 225, attachment 2, footnote 15. Applicant's response: because the building is proposed 2 feet from the right-of-way, a 6-foot sidewalk and a 3-foot esplanade are required. A waiver is requested to provide an 8-foot sidewalk with planting beds for street trees incorporated along the Main Street frontage as coordinated with planning staff. Those are the rationale for the waivers. And staff has agreed that the waiver should be granted.
So I guess given that rationale and staff position, I second Larry's motion to grant those waivers.
Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. I guess we go back to your original motion, Bruce.
I would move we take that motion off the table.
Second.
Second, yeah.
And second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now I believe we have a motion with a friendly amendment for a conditional use and site plan permit approval.
Correct.
Okay. Are you going to make that?
It's already been made and it's sitting, it's off the table, ready to be voted on, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion. Second it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Hey,
I'm sorry, who was it?
me.
Okay. Scott is opposed. Motion is carried.
Thank you very much. We will keep you updated on our MDOT efforts.
Are we, Kevin, are you clear on everything? that needs to
Yes.
be done?
Sorry about that. Yeah, yes, I think the revised 12 and 13 combined that clarified it. I understand the direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next hearing, public hearing for Topsham Housing Authority, LLC, 25 Hackmatack Road, Fairview Commons, tax map U23-075, sketch plan, site plan, and a preliminary subdivision approval for 38-unit residential complex. The applicant is represented by Kurt Neufeld. Is that correct, Kurt?
That's correct.
Okay, can you give us an overview?
Yep. Glad to. Thank you. So again, Kurt Neufeld with Sightlines representing the Topsham Housing Authority. John Hodge with the Topsham Housing Authority is here as a non-participant. Yes, he's in the audience, but I think before I do my thing, I might give him an opportunity to speak if you could allow him to there, Andrew. Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you all for having us here this evening, and thanks to Kurt for getting this application to you. As most people know, Topsham Housing Authority was created by the citizens of Topsham to promote and create affordable housing in Topsham. So we're pleased to be able to bring this project to you to create 38 additional rental units for Topsham citizens. Basically, we're trying to create rental units that are affordable to working families that are living in the area. It's very, very difficult right now in this housing market for households to find decent homes at a decent rent. Rents have just gone skyrocketed right from Portland all the way up the coast, right here to our area as well. One of the biggest thing I think that we need to go forward on is the lack of rental housing and the high cost of rental housing. Right now, the Brunswick Housing Authority, which works in conjunction with Topsham Housing Authority, manages a wait list, and we have over 360 households that are waiting for housing in this area. We also manage housing vouchers, which provides rental assistance to households that need it. And we also do that in combination with other housing authorities across the state. And right now, there are over 23,000 households in the state of Maine waiting for housing assistance. So this is really timely, I think, really needed. And I think we've got a good project that the town can, I think, get on board with. And I think people will appreciate what we've done. It'll be similar to what we did over there on Pleasant Street. That was an 8-unit project. This one obviously is much larger, but the type of housing that we're looking to build is very similar to that. And we hope we'll have some luck here tonight and be able to move forward with this. So thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, John, for queuing it up. I know a lot of things have gone on at the planning board, but you may recall we were here a few months ago. The plan hasn't really changed that much. And we have a quick overview. I would like to share my screen and just hit the highlights of the plan set, if Andrew will let me.
Try now, Kurt.
All right, thank you. So the plan set you have includes a subdivision plan that indicates from the overall parcel, we would be dividing off 6.2 acres, which follows this line around the outside. That 6.2 acres would become the lot for the new subdivision. There's an easement that exists on this parcel and goes down, let's see here, to Hemlock. There's a basin in here, which is partially wet some of the year. And then there's another drainage way that goes here. That would be split, and this part of it would become part of the parcel. I would like to note, and so I'm sure some of the sharp eyes have already spotted that this should say 10 residential apartments, not 8, because there is 38 in total. I think a note got copied over. This unit here, right as you come in, has only 8 because there's a common area, common room that would be part of that building. There is an easement that will be created for the water and sewer districts. There's a 75-foot setback from the stream resource on the westerly boundary. And again, the easement on this side. The remaining land here, it's currently the Mary Meeting Associates Development Corporation, but that would be purchased and become owned by the Housing Authority. However, they have no intention to do anything with it in the near future. The parcel was identified as part of the planned residential development that is Topsham Crossing. The underlying zone is mixed use limited, but in the table that's included on here, the planned residential development zoning requirements are what are listed versus what is proposed. So again, the arrangement of 4 buildings with a central parking area coming up through the middle would be take its interest off of Hackmatack. Hackmatack would be completed by the Housing Authority as part of this project. Would connect from Shady Lane back out to Hemlock, and it would also provide a connection to King Road, which will come through it. The same thing here. Oh, one question I've received is, what is there any possibility for connection through to adjacent parcels? And the answer is no. This existing detention basin would still be used for the housing to the south, as well as take drainage from this after it goes through some treatment areas. So it could not extend to the north, and the stream and private land effectively cuts it off to the west. There are utility stubs that came out to this parcel off of Hemlock, and those would be extended to the site. Both of the water and sewer coming down would be considered main extensions. We've had meetings with the Brunswick Sewer District, I'm sorry, the Topsham Sewer District. Recently, we reviewed it. They have approved it and supportive of it, but I haven't gotten their documentation. I do have documentation in there from the water district. Natural gas is not in the area, so the buildings would be using heat pumps for their air conditioning. The grading and drainage plan, you can see here that there are 2, these are fairly shallow surface depressions with the hatched area in the bottom being a filter media for the DEP's requirements. That we're going to take all the water from the paved areas and sidewalks. They'll come down through a central channel in the middle, and then a small portion of this on the north. So that'll filter through this media before it really goes through the groundwater into this area, with overtopping flows coming in 2 different spillway locations. I think it's been noted in your memo that we haven't submitted the full site location modification or amendment to the town, and that was because we're just collecting some final information from staff and waiting to see where the planning board goes here, preliminary design, but we're ready to submit that this week, assuming there's no substantive changes. And I just have two additional graphics to talk about with slightly higher contrast. I think it helps visualize the areas that would be cleared and be lawn versus building versus pavement. And I have another one here that we might refer back to later that shows the same thing with the aerial. You can see that the remaining land that would become owned by them is wooded, and it's going to remain that way. The landscape plan will replace along the front with some street trees and evergreen trees to provide year-round screening. And there are several trees throughout the development. And there was a lighting plan developed that's also in your package. I think it's already been mentioned that the buildings are going to look like those that have already been created on Pleasant Street. It's a nice combination of 2-story and 1-story, provides a pretty good visual interest. And I do have on the cover sheet from the architect something of an elevation, what that would look like. There's parking for all the staff, I'm sorry, all the residents that would be out there. And I think that there are some notes in the staff review minutes where the snow storage would be. We'll be adding that to the final plan. I think we've got a nice plan here that supports the housing authority goals, meets the demand of the housing in the area, and really fits within the ordinance and the planned residential development. So I'd be happy to answer questions from staff.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Kurt did a fine job.
Okay. Scott, would you like to make a comment or ask questions?
Tom, can I ask you a question before we go on any further?
Yes, ma'am.
On the agenda, it says that this is a public hearing, and the one before was a public hearing, but we didn't open it as a public hearing. Is that correct? Is this a public hearing?
This is a public hearing.
Okay, so you will be opening it for people
So
to
we'll
talk.
be opening, we had the public hearing for the prior case, last meeting.
Okay,
So we will be opening a public hearing
thank you.
here. Okay, thank you. Scott, would you like to ask any questions or comment?
I don't have any questions. Comment is, looks like a great project. I go by the one over on Pleasant Street quite often, and this can look as nice as that. Looking forward to seeing it out there.
Thank you. Bruce?
I got nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Josh?
I too have nothing. Looks like a good project. I agree with Scott.
Okay.
Thank you.
Larry?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'm right there also.
Don't pull your punches, folks. I want to get it all in for final.
Ron?
Yeah, looks like a real good job to me.
Okay, thank you. And I'll add my 2 cents worth. Looks like a nice job. Thank you. We have a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, back up. Okay. Going to open the public hearing. Now, if anyone would like to speak? We have anybody? Andrew?
Yes, just one moment. Terry Bazinski-Bursey.
Yes, thank you. And you pronounced my name perfectly, so thank you very much for doing that. I live in the Topsham Crossing neighborhood on 11 Crabtree, and I am a member, I'm vice president of the Topsham Crossing Homeowners Association. One of the questions we had a meeting with John earlier in the year when he proposed this project to our neighborhood. And one of the concerns of our association was about the increased traffic that would be happening on Tedford Road, and that road is pretty worn. And so there were concerns about that increased traffic and having that one way in, one way out, basically for Main Road. So I was wondering if you could speak to anything that might be considered as far as developing that road further. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to respond as they come up, or?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Well, Tedford Road is a public road that's outside of the boundaries of this. And, as we noted at that meeting, any deficiencies on that really, it's not this forum to discuss that. We will be generating some additional traffic, it's true, but we've designed this to the standards of the town for a road of this type. Excuse me, it will be designed to town standards and meet their requirements to be offered for a public road. As far as the condition of Tedford Road, whether it's Tedford or Middlesex or those that they join into, it's just not generally something we look at unless it becomes an issue. And as I understand, there's no safety issues with Tedford. It's just kind of a tired road. And I don't know what the cycle for the town to be doing any maintenance on that is. So that's kind of where we stand with that.
I can jump in a little bit, Tom, if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Rod.
And just to clarify, since we just spent the last hour talking about traffic, this project does not trigger an MDOT traffic movement permit. It is not within our traffic impact fee area to gain any traffic impact fee out of this. This had come to the board for sketch plan. One of the recollections from that, the board did not push the applicant to do an in-depth traffic analysis nor require our peer review engineer. That's my recollection, and the board could correct me if I'm wrong with that. But I just wanted to provide that in context as to the last agenda discussion.
Thank you. Andrew, do we have anyone else?
I do not see any raised hands, Tom.
Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. Go back to the board. Any more comments or discussion with the board? Anyone? Seeing nothing, hearing nothing? I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, Tom, I move that the application for the preliminary subdivision plan approval submitted by Topsham Housing Authority for tax map U23 lot 75 be approved in accordance with 191-3 and 191-5 of the Topsham Code.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried, unanimous. Thank you. Our last item for the evening is
Wait, Tom.
One more.
I think we need to make a second motion on this because it came before us for both site plan and preliminary plan.
oh, I'm sorry, yes,
So I have another motion.
okay.
Given that the SLOTA isn't available and there may be changes to the site plan as noted, I move that the application for the site plan approval submitted by Topsham Housing Authority for tax map U23 lot 75 be tabled to a future meeting date subsequent to the submission and review of the Site Location and Development Act amendment application.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried.
Hey, thank you very much, folks. We'll see you in several weeks.
Okay, thank you. Now, on to the final applicant for the evening. Highland Green Site Plan Amendment, Mountain Road, Tax Map R04, Lot 16, Lots 17, as cited in the memo of 9/30/2020, and Map R9, Lot 65. This is a subdivision amendment for stormwater, drainage, and curb cuts. The applicant is represented by Chris Belanger. Are you there, Chris?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Would you
Should I
like
say
to
something?
give us a brief overview of what you're doing there?
May I share my screen?
Go for it, Chris.
Basically, I've got a little presentation, very light, very minor. We're here to expand some easements on the subdivision plan. Basically, we added a temporary storm drain outlet. Let me see if I can point it to you. Basically, at the intersection of Erie Drive, which is right in this area, Mountain Road is at the top of the screen. We've substantially built Mountain Road to this point, and we've installed utilities that stub to extend potentially to the apartments project, which is located in this area. As part of that, we needed to create a temporary stormwater outlet that discharged into the adjacent wetland. We added the outlet. We included a ditch to a stone berm level spreader. That level spreader would discharge to the adjacent wetland. We did this as a temporary measure until Erie Drive or the apartments road is built later on. We're still selling the apartments project, and we'll start construction as soon as these sales are met. Basically, Mountain Road is in this area on the master plan. We've expanded the easements in this area to include the temporary outlet, include the level spreader, and include the future pipe that will be extended up Erie Drive. See SK1 in the submittal that we provided. The second basically involves the golf cart crossing. The town requested that we cross at a perpendicular location. We had the easements associated with that already on the plan, but as we were building the road, we noticed that we had a irrigation line supporting the golf course that ran through the old cart path. So we expanded the easement to include that 4-inch irrigation line, basically. Last, well, not last, but third, we've got a proposed curb cut that we're going to access off of Mountain Road to access the self-storage site. I've got a slide that I'll show you in just a second. Basically, this is the overall subdivision plan that we'll be re-recording. This sheet didn't really change all that much, except that we added the easements or added the lines for the easements in these two areas. This is the larger scale subdivision plan where we detail the easement additions. Pretty self-explanatory, I think. This SK1 is associated with the temporary stormwater outlet. Basically, we've stubbed all our utilities up to the intersection. We've installed these two basins as well as the stub outlet, and we basically added an elbow and discharged the pipe into a swale that we've created that'll end up in a level spreader right there. This has been built, and you can see the outlet, temporary outlet pipe in this location, the riprap swale down to the level spreader. You'll note that there's an existing outlet here as well. Basically, we tied the two outlets together and created a stone berm adjacent to the forest that would discharge the stormwater to the forest slowly. This is the SK2 relative to the Gulf irrigation crossing. The Gulf irrigation line is right here. The town requested that we sleeve that in duct line pipe, which we've done. The perpendicular crossing is in that area. SK3 is relative, we want to create a curb cut off of Mountain Road to access the future self-storage facility. Prior to that project being developed, that'll be used for maintenance and laydown. Mountain Road has been substantially constructed at this point. I believe we're installing curb on the opposite side of the road today. We're hoping to final pave it within a matter of a couple weeks. So all the utilities are substantially in, the sidewalk is paved, the road has been base paved, and curbing is nearly installed. This is the back end of the project where it connects to Can-Am. The sidewalk base pavement is connected at this point. This is just a look at the road, looking from the Can-Am side, looking to Village Drive. You can see the curbing is completed on the right, and we're working on the curbing on the left. Basically, that's what I have for a presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Hey, Tom, could I provide just a quick context?
Yes, sir.
And I'll be very brief, and I apologize. I don't want to add any more time for you folks, but this just really is a very simple minor amendment that came to us during construction where part of the approved plan is a minor change to that temporary outlet. That's an MDEP permit that was authorized by MDEP. That's why it is constructed. So that permit, that's why that storm outlet is already in the ground. What we're capturing with this amendment legally is to make sure that the drainage easement is provided in the event that the town accepts the road and the temporary structure is still in place. So we're just trying to be fairly thorough with making sure that we're all legally in place once this is offered to the town.
I'd also like to add that we did update the stormwater agreement to include the latest exhibits and the latest plan references as required.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify the memo too, so if anybody has a motion, I do throw in all of the tax maps and lots that can just be referenced. That's a very lengthy motion. And the only condition that's changed is just the update to the plans, the dates and the drawing numbers. Just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments or questions? Scott?
I think, Chris, I think you mentioned it. So the temporary easement for the stormwater is in place until Erie Drive is completed. Is that correct?
Correct. We're going to build the storm drain, continue the storm drain to the wet pond, the existing pond that's there when we build the road.
Okay. And then my other question is just, you showed some of the older plans where there wasn't a curb cut to the storage area. But in those older plans, the access to the storage area was through the other lot. Like that's how we were planning to get there. In the new plans, it looks like those two areas will remain separate when finalized. So the storage area will just have that one curb cut, and then the other, I guess it is maintenance and RV parking, or I can't remember what that ended up being. Those two curb cuts are just for that specific area, correct?
Correct. The curb cuts related to the maintenance would be separated from the curb cut related to the self-storage site.
And the two lots won't connect like they had shown before.
Right. If we can connect the two in the back somehow, we still might do that. But I think that the grading might challenge that. So I think ultimately we'll be off of Mountain Road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, do you have any questions?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Josh, any questions, comments?
I have no questions or comments.
Thank you. Larry?
Likewise, no questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Ron?
Nope, all set.
Thank you. I guess we're all set then. We'll entertain a motion.
Okay. So there's no public hearing on this one, right?
No.
Okay. I move that the application for Island Green Site and Subdivision Amendment Review for Mountain Road temporary change for tax maps as listed on page 2 of the memo from Rod Melanson dated September 30th, 2020, with the November 2019 conditions maintained, with the following updated condition of this approval is based on the approved plans listed below and all submissions and information provided by the applicant at final approval, whether referenced in any findings or conditional approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to,
Motion to adjourn?
yes, sir.
Thank you very
Motion's
much.
been-
Thanks, applicant.
Thank you.
Do we have,
Appreciate
Second that motion to adjourn.
Bruce is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
Good night, all.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.